Does Audie get to clap again?
Yes.
Ari gets to clap this one.
Ha ha! What if I do a snap instead, like this?
Like Thanos, because you are a villain. Welcome back to Engagement Party. I'm Audie Cornish.
And I'm Ari Shapiro. Listen, before we dive into today's show, we want to hear from you. If there's something in your social media feed that you are perplexed by, that you have a question about, that you would like us to analyze and discuss for you, send us a little video, just like a selfie video, 30 seconds to a minute. We want you to email us. The address is engagementparty@cnn.com, and we might use it in a future episode.
Now, on to today's show.
What have you got for us?
We're actually looking at some really interesting things today. First, we're going to hear about solitude vlogging or aspirational loneliness, which is the world of content where people with no friends share with the public. We're also going to talk about the World Cup, all that content you have been seeing online that's giving us the warm and cultural fuzzies.
Finally, foreigners love something about America.
Okay, I think there's more to it than that. And then lastly, like a prayer and the Whore Madonna complex, Catholic core is back. We are seeing I wouldn't even say iconography because that implies something very specific, but we are seeing the costuming that nods to Catholicism. And Ari, I want to know whether you've been seeing this as well.
Okay, I'm quite clearly not a Catholic, and yet my feed is inundated with nun content. Most specifically, one nun in particular who is not a real nun. Everybody knows last year Rosalia released this album, Looks. She appears as a nun on the cover. Lots of critics called it the #1 album of the year. She is now on tour. And so we are seeing all of these videos where people are having what they describe as a religious experience at a Rosalia concert. I want to play you a clip.
So this person describing it as low-key, a religious experience.
Yeah. So Rosalia is singing this song, Mio Cristo piange diamante. I hope I said that right, which is like Christ cried diamonds. What I find really interesting about this is like she's a global pop star, one of the biggest. And yet, unlike people like Lily Allen, who released an album last year where she also dressed as a nun.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the Lily Allen nun,
And this
not
was
subtle.
her divorce
She's got
album.
a cigarette. She's got a lot of legs showing. Lily Allen here is clearly playing with like the sexualization of the nun imagery, whereas Rosalia identifies as a religious person, and she is showing that there doesn't have to be a divide between the sacred and the profane. She can make mega celebrity pop music that is also authentically calling on some of these tropes of religion. But to expand the conversation just a little, it's not only nuns that we're seeing. It's hot priests. It's the Pope doing a 6-7 gesture as he greets young Catholics.
I know.
6-7.
Well, he looks a little puzzled here. Okay, there we
he
go.
doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
Is this showing up in your world, Audie?
It's showing up in my world. Well, first, is this your only touch point into Catholicism is Rosalia? Because unlike not being Catholic, you do look like a Rosalia fan. Like that actually tracks. So are there other things that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean,
because for me, I saw like there were in the Spurs-Knicks game, there was like nuns there praying over the Spurs.
Okay, so we're also seeing actual nuns break through on social media.
In podcasts,
there was a
another
Brazilian beatboxing nun who like went mega viral a year ago.
Then there's the world of hot priests. These are guys who are like kind of jacked, kind of handsome.
Or extremely jacked, extremely handsome.
Okay, fine. I come from Massachusetts, and there's many a Catholic in Massachusetts. We used to call this kind of person, Father, what a waste.
What a waste.
Y'all can't say
W-A-I-S-T, like he's got a drop from his shoulders to the way. Okay, yes,
I know it's not appropriate,
yes.
but it came from this like book in the 80s about like Catholicism. So it was a whole thing, even though some people think it's like not a cool thing to say. So don't hit me up in the comments. I know about it already. How much of this is typical cyclical pop star posing? And I understand Rosalia, she's leaning into the divine. But I still see the usual using none in particular imagery as a shorthand for subversion.
Yeah.
It's all supposed to be the irony. It's like, I'm a nun, but I'm not wearing pants.
I'm a cool nun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I haven't seen something like this since maybe Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act, the movie
I
from like
love that that's a touch point for
1992,
you. Okay,
3.
sure.
Iconic. Classic.
For me, that's more about Lauryn Hill, but I'm into it.
Sister Act 2.
Oh, yeah.
Also legendary.
Oh, okay.
But she didn't show up until the sequel.
Okay.
I think there are a couple things that are different now. One is, right now, the call is coming from inside the house. The Pope and everyone on down sees that social media is a way to reach people,
Yeah.
and they are not rejecting modernity. I saw this quote from Pope Leo that I loved. He was referring to the Catholic Church, and he says, she cannot consider herself a stranger to the forces shaping society. In other words, if people are on TikTok, we need to be on TikTok. The Pope, the nuns.
Yeah.
Like, he hosted a gathering for influencers at the Vatican.
He did. He did. That's actually how I learned about the hot priest thing. So just so you know, it was research.
New York Post headline.
I want to go one beat further on Pope Leo because, as we said, reaching out to the influencers is one thing. He also reaches out to Hollywood directly. And I noticed this because Spike Lee actually went to him and asked for a miracle. And I was like, why was Spike Lee in the
About the
Vatican?
Knicks?
Yeah, exactly. And he got it. So there. But at this event, it was November 2025. He's talking to filmmakers. There's like Kate Blanchett, Greta Gerwig, Judd Apatow. All these people are in the audience, including Spike Lee. And he says the logic of algorithms tend to repeat what works, but art opens up what is possible. Not everything has to be immediate or predictable. Preach,
that.
as they say.
What is it
in
that
my
they
faith.
do this?
But that's not what they say in church, but I like how you think. The last line of this, though, is important to me. Beauty is not just a means of escape. It is above all an invocation. And that, I had to really think about that because that's kind of what we think on this show. We don't think that things that seem trivial are only about escape. Like there's something to be learned or divined from it. And he was sort of saying something like that about beauty and about art specifically.
Yeah.
And that's why I think he doesn't see it as so divorced from church thinking.
Right. There's something else that I think is going on here, which, you know, you mentioned that you're from Massachusetts. We both came up as journalists in the same era. And for many years, if you were talking about the Catholic Church from a journalistic perspective,
you were talking
about priest-child sexual abuse.
Yeah.
And no matter what the Catholic Church did for a while, it was in the shadow of that. But the way that the church works, where you get a new pope every so often, there's almost like this refresh, this reset
Well, it's
button.
usually
And
not this often. For the
well, it's
record.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
But it now feels like that story is, and that like horrible scandal and revelation is far enough in the rearview mirror that the Catholic Church actually can be cool and actually can speak to younger generations in a way that 10 or 20 years ago it just couldn't, because it was still overcoming that
it was
shadow.
Fully mired in scandal. Okay, it was like the scandal was international. It was huge. I mean, it was so specific to that moment.
Yeah.
But I do.
And it had a long tail.
It had a really long tail. I will say that right now you do have a political movement in the U.S. on the right. It's the idea that there's a more sort of traditional kind of Roman Catholic Church that many on the right, J.D. Vance being the leading and most public convert as of just before the pandemic. His new book is out. It's called Communion. You're seeing him everywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
So you are seeing this content everywhere. He is talking about his conversion to Catholicism. And I have people who come on set on the morning show who are young Republicans, one of whom converted like in the last year.
Okay, so what's really interesting is that on the right, you have this kind of like Catholic conversion narrative that is drawing people to the church.
Yes.
And on the left, you have Pope Leo fighting with Donald Trump, or at least Trump fighting
he
with
didn't pick the
Leo.
fight, but
right.
yeah.
And then Leo putting out this encyclical about AI that has people on the left saying, I love my woke pope, as one meme put it. And so there is this almost bipartisan appeal where no matter your political leanings, you can find something to like in what the church is doing right now.
I think what I'm wrestling with, and you've brought this up in the past, is that for a time, and again, it may be because of where I grew up, there was a kind of secular Catholic. There were the cradle Catholics, these people who grew up and they really did everything. And then there's a world of people that I grew up with who were Catholic, who kind of went to Mass on high holidays and not much else. And it's not clear to me, number one, that they're coming back and in what numbers. And number two, for the people who are embracing its aesthetic, my most hated word of the internet, I don't really feel the divine in your content farming.
I think you've put your finger on something important. And look, within Judaism, there has always been a tradition of people who are not religiously Jewish, but who are culturally Jewish. And that doesn't even mean you go to services on the high holidays. That means you're listening to Mel Brooks and Jerry Seinfeld and eating bagels and saying oy vey, and the idea of God or Torah is so far from what you connect to, it's not even a part of the conversation. But I see a distinction between, and maybe this is just me, culture and religion. To me, you can have zero religion and a whole lot of culture. And those people with a whole lot of culture and zero religion are not interested in evangelizing. They're interested in, again, to return to the Jewish example, eating bagels and listening to Mel Brooks.
I feel like there's a rabbi out there somewhere who's going to hop in the comments and disagree with you.
Great. I look forward to...
Well, no, because your description of the secular version of like Seinfeld and bagels is like, that's not anything to live for. That's not a way of living in the world. That's just being a regular Western person. It's like if you're not actually embracing the culture that you come from.
You're saying you can't distinguish the culture from the religion.
I think it's a little silly.
I am very interested to see whether ultimately this does translate to more numbers of converts, of people going to church, because up to now, there have been a lot of anecdotes about sort of like a religious revival resurgence in Gen Z. And the latest data we've been able to find shows that like the steady decline in religious participation has maybe leveled out. And there's, like I said, a lot of anecdotes, but not a lot of data showing that there actually is an
I would
increase.
say that there's plenty of people in the world of religiosity who see that leveling out as a win. Like, it's no longer hemorrhaging people who are going to the non-religious column, and that is meaningful. I know, like, personally, the church I go to, which is an Episcopal church, it's not full smells and bells, but we're close.
I like the incense so much.
Oh, you like the aesthetic. Welcome. Episcopal core. I don't know what that involves. Getting up and sitting down multiple times and singing in B flat. That's what I experienced so far. But I have noticed we have a ton of families. We had so many baptisms. Literally, the pastor who was leaving had a cutoff. She was like, I'm sorry, all baby's going to have to be baptized by someone else.
Wow.
But
is that because people...
And they are young families.
Is that because
people
start going to church when they have a kid and they want their kid to be raised in a tradition that... So like maybe you make it to age 30 or 35 and haven't been to church in a decade. And then when you have a kid, you think, oh, we should really get back there and have this community and have this tradition that our kid can grow up in.
That's a good question. I think what you're talking about is a question that we're probably going to come to later in the show as well, about community. Where do you find community in modern Western life? There's a couple paths to take, and one of them remains and has always been since the start of this nation.
Yeah, religion.
Some sort of religious community.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is Katie Prejean McGrady. She has a Sirius XM show. Every time we have like a Catholic story going on with the Pope, I call her because she's so fun. And like, this is her moment.
Okay, so we actually asked her what she makes of this.
Tell me, what do you think of this going from like nothing to all of a sudden it's cool?
I think it's awesome that Catholicism is kind of trendy. And I say that as somebody who's obviously super Catholic and who loves seeing the church having a moment. But I've also heard from a lot of people, both on my Sirius XM show and just through social media, that there's a lot of encouragement to be found when people are sharing very honestly and authentically about what they believe and why they believe it. And that this is resonating with people as they look for community, as they look for truthful answers, as they look for something that gives them deeper meaning and purpose. I consider it to be an incredible moment of evangelization. And it's actually something that I think we need to look at as the trend is leading to something deeper.
See why I wanted to play that for you?
Absolutely. And watching this made me think of something that had not occurred to me until now, is that we've been having 5 years of conversations about people going online and being sucked into communities that are dark and conspiratorial and just kind of off the map, for people to be brought into communities that are actually sort of well-founded with centuries of history and culture and tradition and local communities that they can plug into in real life rather than dark wormholes of the internet is really kind of refreshing and reassuring.
Well, that of course brings us to our second topic. Today we are talking about aspirational loneliness and solitude vlogging. All of those words together
Sound contradictory to me.
is describing a world of people who post videos of themselves being alone.
It's got a kind of ASMR quality to
It
it.
does. You have to actually see it.
Okay, let's watch some video so we know what we're talking about. POV, you're a single woman with no kids and no friends, so Friday night looks like this.
It says no judging. Why would I judge? Your house is immaculate.
Still waiting for the crushing loneliness to kick in.
And then Remote Recruiter 24.
Some people don't understand that sitting in your own house, in peace,
Yes.
eating snacks,
Wish I could.
Said
and
like
minding
a
your
parent
own
of two
business
children.
Minding your own business is the
is
best
priceless.
part.
I have no friends and it's a Saturday night and I just didn't want to be at home, so I decided to go see a horror movie by myself at 10 p.m.
So I want to show you one more.
Y'all, I don't have any friends, so come with me to go solo clubbing in Washington, D.C. I love to dance, but I feel like no one else...
I feel like most of the loneliness influencers I've seen are women, so interesting that we've got a dude here.
Again, y'all, I don't drink, but by the end of the night, it's like I was drunk. I was stumbling around. I kept laughing and giggling. And I even made some, like, low-key friends. So would I recommend solo clubbing? No, because you're gonna enjoy it so much, you're gonna want to do it every night.
Fascinating.
I wanted to play this for a couple of reasons. It has all the elements of like Gen Z, Gen Alpha night out, right? It's like, I don't drink. Ding. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have friends. Ding. Like, I'm going out and I'm in a place that I don't understand. A club. And we're dancing. And we're just dancing like no one can see, which is, you know, ding, going to a club. Like, there's some of these things that are just experiences that may be new for a generation that didn't get to have them the same way you or I did.
Yeah.
And I just want to carve out that slice because I think there's other things we're going to talk about here. Loneliness among adult women, among adult men, but in particular, the content of young people who this is their mode of communication.
Yeah.
And so his way of going out alone was taking a friend, and the friend was the audience.
His phone.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that I find so perplexing about the loneliness influencer industrial complex.
It's not at an industrial complex.
You're right.
Yet. We
It's
got to
just
save that.
people
Yeah.
who are, by definition, isolated and alone, and documenting it in a, by definition, public-facing way, saying, tell me in the comments what your Taco Bell order is, or what you think of this, or what your favorite night, or like, this to me is a medium that seeks connection, interaction, communication on the subject of isolation, friendlessness, loneliness.
I don't think of it that
feels
way.
like the contradiction to me.
Because you're thinking of it as a performance-based medium.
Totally. I mean, each of these people is filming everything we're looking at.
I think that's
like
wrong.
They're making a decision to set up the phone.
They see it as a third space. A third space is a different place. It's like, are you at home? Are you at work? Or are you in the third space? And the third space is church, or it used to be the Masons, or bowling, or the Boy Scout troop. It's the world of places you could go where there's like casual connection, what he was calling low-key friends. You also weren't obligated to be there. You were there of your own sort of choice.
so many
Wait. And there's no cost to it. It's not the
Yeah.
same as just going to a restaurant, which by definition you go with friends. We don't have these spaces anymore. They don't have these spaces anymore. Where do you go to meet people, be social, that doesn't involve spending a bunch of money?
The loneliness epidemic is not new.
That's
Joe
true.
Biden, Surgeon General, did a whole listening
Yes.
tour about the loneliness epidemic. That crosses generations, it crosses genders. I think what is new is the documentation and kind of glorification of the loneliness lifestyle.
The aspiration.
Yeah.
The aspiration. Yeah,
And
100%.
The kind of like clink, clink, clink of frozen French fries falling onto the baking sheet before you make your girl dinner, you know, and the like slicing the lime to put in your Diet Coke that you're putting in the wine glass.
I
like,
thought those ones were fake. Like, I know, I'm serious. I was reading these trend pieces and I was like,
There's
this-
actually someone behind the camera holding and filming.
Well,
for
it
them.
just seemed like BS. I don't know why I didn't believe that one. Because there are plenty I've seen, certainly like in the Black community, for instance, like with Black women, so much of our friendships you use the language of sister and sisterhood. It's more than friendship. And you do have these communities that are rooted in churches or sororities.
Right.
And if you're actually not affiliated with those spaces and communities, you're like weirdly locked out. And I have seen people post content where they're saying, hey, I have a good life, I have a good job, and I don't have adult friends. And it also happens when people don't have kids. It's not like they're back in the day, auntie. And like, we're going to auntie's house. Auntie doesn't have kids. This is the cool auntie, what I aspired to be in my final form. But I had children.
Cool auntie.
So, yeah, cool auntie. Now, cool auntie is not necessarily in the pod, so to speak.
Well, look, there was just an article in Vox about how to make friends. It was specific instructions like try repotting, which was a term I had never heard before.
That's what you do with a plant.
Exactly. And repotting means if this is a friend from the coffee shop, try doing something like going for a walk together. If this is a friend from work, try going to a movie together, repot. Or there's this thing called soft socializing, which I've also only just learned about, which I guess the kids are doing now, which is instead of having like a high pressure, let's go to dinner or a bar or a movie, you say like, let's just take a walk together. Or let's check our emails in the same room and do work in the same space, which is sort of lower pressure, lower cost. You're seeing all of this media devoted to what are the on-ramps.
Have you ever converted an acquaintance into a proper friendship?
It's interesting you should
Not a famous
ask.
person, Ari Shapiro.
No, it's
Not a
interesting you should
famous
ask.
person,
Living
a
in Washington,
normie
D.C.
relationship. Okay.
I'm going to get real. Living in Washington, D.C. for 25 years, I have had at least 3 cycles of very, very close friends all move away. DC is a transient town.
Totally true.
And when suddenly every member of your Wednesday movie night group is living in a different city, you need to make new friends. And so I have actually developed techniques for turning acquaintances into friends. The most recent one is that like I now host potlucks rather than dinner parties because a dinner party feels high pressure. A potluck, you can text 50 people, some of whom you barely know, say, show up with whatever you want, and it's very low pressure. Or another one is that like I this year joined a climbing gym, a bouldering gym, which is super fun and has lots and lots of guest passes. So if there's a casual acquaintance, I'll be like, hey, if you ever want to come and try this, like come bouldering with me sometime. And then you're doing a thing together that doesn't involve like sitting opposite a table
Ari,
having
like,
cocktails.
Even the fact that you started
And
this
none of those
story,
were famous.
I salute you. Not all heroes wear capes. I think that there are people for whom they don't have 50 contacts in their phone. Like that's what
course,
I'm talking
yeah.
about. And it happens so slowly. It happens slowly. And it can happen when all your friends pair off and get married, or maybe all your friends start to have kids, or maybe you move for a job, they move for a job. And one day you look up and you're like, I have no one to pick me up at the airport. You know a lot of people. You know people at work. You don't know anyone else.
Yeah.
And it feels somehow like a personal failure, or can be, that because people always respond with a bunch of techniques and suggestions.
Right.
You're like, I'm lonely. And someone is like, have you thought of Meetup? And it's
Right,
like,
or
yeah,
repotting.
I thought of Meetup. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
so what do you do?
well, I mean, for me, I've gone through the same thing you have where people move away. One, I think I've made my, I've put less pressure on friendships in general. So there are some people for whom I may not see them for 6 months, but the minute I get on the phone with them, it's like we never left. And it's okay if what we send each other is a text or a voice message. That I have a friend where we established a rule of sending random emojis. It has to be random. And all it means is,
Right.
I'm thinking of you.
Yeah.
Then there's a world, and please don't be mad at me, people who are in this club, like the parent friends.
Oh, yeah.
These are a bunch of people who you really wouldn't know them from a can of paint.
your
Except your
kids are
kids
in
go to the
kindergarten
same
together,
school.
yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
you could do what some people do, which is like be dramatic about it and be like, oh, moms, these aren't the cool
Right.
moms. These are the moms I'm stuck with. And it's like, okay, snob, that's why you're alone. Maybe you just need to open up a little bit and say to yourself, well, we do have a connection. You know what I mean?
And
like,
that's-
it's okay for this friendship to be where it is. It doesn't, you don't need to meet this very special bar
This is
for my
something
friendship.
that I think pop culture is actually doing a very good job of modeling right now. I think
why?
there are a lot of shows depicting friendship that is not, we've known each other since we were 8 and we're inseparable.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think there are shows depicting friendship that is complicated and dysfunctional and incidental because your lives overlap in a certain way. And that can be what friendship is rather than we finish each other's every sentence and love spending time together.
Here's
So
my
I'm thinking
beef with
about,
it.
just to name like
Shrinking.
The Bear, The Four Seasons.
Here's why I think you're wrong. This persistent mythology in pop culture, from Hollywood specifically, is about found family. It's not about friendship. It's about turning the friends you have into a family. And you do that because you're disconnected from your family. Fine, that's fair. But what that means is over time, we're all watching this and we're like, wait a second, why haven't I found my family? You know, I almost dropped out of your life for a time, right? Like,
It was a tough time.
yeah, during the Are you making fun of me? I'm being
No,
serious right now.
I'm being
Okay, we're
serious
being
too. We
very
all had a
serious
tough
right now.
time.
You can
The
cut this.
pandemic was extreme.
The pandemic was extreme. I changed jobs, and then I was talking with someone, and they were like, it was a mutual friend of ours, and they're like, you know, Ari really misses you. You guys haven't talked in forever. And I was like, what? I got all mad. I was like, he could call me. My phone works. And then I was like, oh, wait, that's dumb. Let me figure this out.
Yeah. And then we started having regular
I reached
breakfast
out to you,
dates.
but we
Yeah.
had a conversation,
Yeah.
didn't we?
Yeah.
Where it was like, did you think it was weird me reaching out in that way?
Not at all.
Did
No.
you feel repotted?
No, I felt like coming out. So look, our friendship for years was grounded in a space that we were in together
Work.
all day, every day.
Yes.
Work, which at times, not to, stolen valor, but at times it felt like we were in the trenches of a war together,
Yeah.
and that brings people really close.
It does.
And then each of us kind of had different things going on that brought us to different spaces. But I think one of the hallmarks of like a strong, enduring, important life friendship is that you can drift apart and come back together. And you
I don't
can't-
think it's a given that you come back. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I sat down, I was like, Dear Journal, I miss Ari. And then I called you, and then we sat down, and then we
Yeah.
had a conversation that's like, why did we fall out of touch? I've
Yeah.
had multiple conversations with friends where I've texted them, like, why are we still in touch?
Yeah.
And then we immediately are. That first phone call is the hardest call to make.
Yeah.
And reaching out to people who you aren't sure aren't going to just reject you or ignore you. I mean, I know why people who spend all this time swiping on dating apps
Yeah.
aren't ready to do that for friends.
You know what I think is part of my thing is that I've had so many friends with kids who get consumed with their
Yes.
parental life and their children life
100%.
that I sometimes feel like they have so many pressures on their time.
I know.
I don't want to be the one
But we
being
can
like,
feel it
get
happening.
a babysitter.
No, we can feel it
Yeah,
happening.
yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? I
Totally.
remember The Cut did this story that made me want to never, ever be on their website again. It was literally like, I hate your kids because they get in the way of me having brunch with you. That was not, it was
that
far.
is the person I never want to
It
be.
was far more clickbaity than that.
Yeah.
And I understood the position the person was saying, that drift, I don't like it. It's
Right.
frustrating. Why are your kids taking priority over all that stuff? And I actually understand that, but I feel like, just for the record, y'all, we feel it when you're pulling away and we feel helpless. It's almost like you can't do anything about it. 'Cause
We
you're-
meaning parents.
Yeah, it's like you're there like this trying to be like, I want to go to brunch. And then some kid like pukes in your lap. And, people have such conflicted feelings, especially in East Coast enclaves, about children and families, that there's this weird vibe where you don't really feel like you can say, don't forget me.
Well, I think the answer, what you have to do is get CNN to make a show that you and your friend can host together.
No. In fact, I think this show only works because we repotted.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Otherwise, I'd be like, why is he calling me?
He
Is
just wants to
calling me
make
to
a
be
show.
on CNN. Obviously.
Wow, that got real.
It did get real. Anyway, so your aspiration-coded solitude, as New York Magazine calls it. We see you, loneliness influencers. Please hit us up in the comments. Maybe you'll make new friends. That is what Engagement Party is all about. Come on in.
Speaking of new friends, should we invite someone else into the
Yes.
party?
Oh my God,
okay.
I love this
okay.
part.
We have not a famous person. Sorry, Madeline. we have a real human who you haven't seen in movies or podcasts or TV shows, presumably. I don't know you. Madeline from New York City. Join the party.
Hi, Audie and Ari. I'm a huge World Cup fan. I've been watching all the matches so far, and I've also been watching all the TikToks of fans coming from around the rest of the world, especially from Europe, discovering beautiful American traditions like ranch and Buc-ee's and air conditioning. I'm wondering if you guys have seen these. I would love to know if you think they're paid actors or if the U.S. is finally getting some good PR.
Okay, can we just watch a couple of these before we break them down in case
Yes.
anyone has not seen them? Also, just because they're delightful.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Are American sunsets always like this?
I love that Scottish accent.
Yeah. But
The sky's on fire, man. It's like
just
candy
a
floss.
suburban neighborhood.
Candy floss, that's
And
what
the
they
breeze.
call cotton candy.
Okay.
Yeah. Here's another one.
Welcome
Love
to
of
the sun,
barbecue.
Scots.
How big is that?
Giant
How
rib.
big is that?
Giant rib. Correct.
With a little
Correct.
Japanese flag on his cheek.
I have seen so many people be excited about the size of the plates.
Totally.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, to the question though, how real is it? I think the air conditioning content is real. Europe is in a heat wave. They don't have a lot of air conditioning. I think the joy over air conditioning that we've seen is absolutely unequivocally real.
Yes, and I think the is it Scottish fans in Boston drinking all the beer to the point
Except
where we're
Bud
doing
Light.
news reports about
Yeah.
beer shortages? I think that's real.
But the New York Times just dropped a story about the net that is sweeping up some of this content is also sweeping up things like somebody who was in the United States years ago recorded a TikTok and now it's being scooped into the World
Right,
Cup
'cause the algorithm
content
is just
machine.
looking for-
Or there was even like
yeah.
a satirist whose stuff was taken seriously. And that's not even to say we're in this economy where so many of the clips we see are actually paid content.
Right.
Do we have any way of knowing if a Buc-ee's social media manager is running a paid advertising campaign that is paid? I'm like,
I know.
I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm just saying
I
we
have
don't know.
mixed feelings because I don't think corporations are all that good at leading trends. I think that the savviest of them, at best, are good on hopping one and riding the actual
Like the
wave.
Hidden Valley Ranch dressings that were small enough to get through TSA.
Yeah. And so that's one thing. I think there is an earned media opportunity for small businesses, medium-sized businesses. Like, that's great to be able to post online someone who came to your deli or whatever. And if it gets swept up in the algorithm of World Cup content, that's even better. That's better than you could do on your own. The flip side is there's probably a little bit of relief because there's a world of people who wondered, like me, if the U.S. would be the villain of the story.
Completely.
Especially when there was like booing at the NHL games
Yeah.
last year during the beef with Canada and the U.S. over tariffs.
And the
then
ticket
you got the
prices for these games.
specifically the U.S. being like, we're gonna take Greenland. There was this sense that like, would we be punished?
Not to mention the
for
war with Iran.
our
I mean, like,
government's isolationism?
absolutely.
Would we be
or
punished?
aggression.
Well, exactly. So, and there, it's not looking like that's the case. Okay, people are not booing the American men or anything like that. It's not turning out that way. And so, I think we've got a positive case of what we call sports washing, where you
Absolutely.
take a political moment that's not going so great, and you throw a sports event over it, and then everyone feels good.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is especially charming about this is that when we think about exporting American culture elsewhere in the world, we often think about like Taylor Swift or Beyonce or a Steven Spielberg movie or something like that.
This
we
is a
don't often think
baffling mix
about
of cultural identifiers.
you know, this is like
Wait,
Midwestern
what is your, say
core.
that again. Your culture
Taylor
is
Swift, Beyonce, or Steven Spielberg movies.
What?
I mean,
What's
when
the
you
food
think
of that culture?
the globalization of American culture is like those juggernauts, you know?
No, I would say the globalization of American culture makes us think that the ubiquity means they all know about it already. So the idea that they would come to the US and express surprise at things is genuinely surprising to us.
That's right.
Because we're
That's
like,
right.
it's in all the shows. We thought y'all all knew about this.
Yeah, and then you have somebody like swooning over Miracle Whip, and it's
Right.
and it's
And you're
also
like,
sweet
wait,
because
there's
it's
no
kind of like
mayonnaise there?
slightly
Is that the
Midwestern
promised land?
core and Southern core, and
Yeah.
so much of what gets celebrated globally from the United States is the kind of like coastal elite stuff.
Yeah.
New York,
it's just
LA,
here's five
and-
people in New York living in an apartment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now we have like somebody at a truck stop marveling at pork rinds.
So, Madeline, Yes, you're seeing a lot of things in your feed. Some people are surfing the algorithm, and some people really are having a good time. And either way, it sounds like we're here for it.
Yeah, and we are also here for whatever it is that you want us to discuss that is in your
you guys,
feed.
Send us your videos. What do you see that you want reverse engineered? What's the thing you see on your feed that you're like, why is this here? I'm too embarrassed to ask. Send us a video at
engagementparty@cnn.com.
all lowercase, and we could use it in our next episode.
Okay, should we touch grass, Audie?
Yes.
What have you got?
Okay, you're going to be proud of me because I actually touched actual grass.
I love that.
So let's start this with a little story that starts with this Band-Aid.
I was wondering. I wasn't going to ask, but I was wondering.
Yeah,
I did
that's
notice, but
okay.
didn't say anything.
So it was Father's Day. Decided
Yes.
to give Dad a break and took the kids to some kid's birthday party, which was at a zip lining park.
Okay. Oh, no.
And tree rope
Is that
walking.
a zip line burn?
It is.
Oh, no.
Okay. So the older kid goes off with the party.
Yeah.
He's already on the Black Diamond. Okay.
You're right.
He's 9. Fears nothing. He didn't sign the waiver. He didn't read the waiver. So he's fearless. I go with the 6-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
He completely kicks my ass. Like, he's like, Mama, we need to go faster. You know what I mean?
no.
And you clip these things
Yeah.
on, and the instructions are harrowing. You get there, and like a teenage...
You've signed the waiver.
You sign a waiver, so you can't sue. And then a teenager comes over to you and is like, okay, hey, what's up? So what you're going to need is clamp A, goes into clamp B, that moves into the C clamp. Never take this one off. Also hit the key, and then you step off the platform, but not too fast. And I'm just like...
And the 6-year-old's like, got it.
Yes, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like, they're gonna send me out into like 30-foot high tree platform? And you know what? My child did fantastic. And the fear of him being alone made me take risks and move in ways
You're like the
that
mother lifting up the car off her
Yes, I
child.
wouldn't have done it otherwise. I don't think I would have stepped off any kind of platform if he wasn't on the other side.
And you only needed minor medical attention.
I did. It was only minor. The best part is every time we reached a new and more complex kind of stepping rope scenario, he would just yell, "This is terrifying, Mama."
Aw.
And I'm like, thank you. You've given me the strength I need
Yeah.
to make it across. So you'll be proud of me. I went outside.
I'm very proud of you.
I tried something
That's great.
new. It was like weirdly athletic and tiring. So
love.
yeah, I
That's so
did
nice.
touch grass.
Well, my touch grass this past weekend, I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Pink Martini had a show there, and I went out a couple days early to visit a friend who recently moved back there because it's where he grew up. And on another Father's Day touch grass, on Father's Day, we went to the cottage on a lake that has been in his family for like many, many decades. And his whole extended family lives less than an hour's drive from there. And I thought about how, for me growing up, the aunts and uncles and cousins all lived in different places. And we would plan a week during the summer when everybody would get together and, you know, rent houses on the same lake. So all the cousins would play together and it would be a really big thing. And it was amazing to be with this family that every weekend in the summer, they are there. And, you know, I loved my childhood and my relatives, and don't get me wrong, like I had a very nice
No, and I grew
upbringing.
up in an immigrant household, so people were literally on different continents. It was very
Yeah.
hard to get together. So now when I see that experience with other people, I'm like, oh, that's what that looks like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
And
didn't
it
really
was-
understand it.
Oh, can I tell you an embarrassing story from that day? We were playing volleyball, and this very, very sweet girl, my friend's niece, was on the other team, and it came down to the game point, and she was like, wait, so if I get this point, I win the game? And we were like, yep, that's right. So she served it, and it came over to my side, and I was like, oh yeah, no, that was out. And I was like, no, that serve was out.
Just so we're clear.
And my friends
Just
were
so
like,
we're
my friends
clear.
were like, Ari, this child.
What are you doing?
I don't know. I was in my head.
I'm never
We're
taking
returning
you
to
around my
Catholicism.
children.
I am having
Why
a confessional
is Uncle
moment.
Ari so mean
I know.
to me? Yeah, that's how that's going to go down.
Okay, well, now I've had my confession,
Honestly,
so I'm
I was
absolved,
glad
right?
you didn't spike the ball in the kid's
In the
face.
kid's
I
head,
genuinely
no.
thought that's where this story was going. We need to end on a different note other
Yeah.
than you taking away the hopes
The
and dreams
child's
of
win.
a child in front
Yeah.
of her friends and family.
Well, happy Father's Day, everyone. See you next week.
See you next week.